Hey everybody, this is Whitebone Knives. Today we're going to be showing you how to put a wood handle, on your knife that you've come this far already. So what we're going to do is set these off to the side, and we're going to cut pins to fit through the knife and the two slabs of wood. So we're going to, since there's 4 holes in here, we need to cut 4 pins, and I'm just going to cut them off at about an inch length. And there's 4. Okay, now that we cut our pins, there's going to be these burrs across the edges right there. So what we're going to do is try to take those down on our grinder a little bit. You can also use a file if you need to, but I'm just going to use my grinder to my advantage and go ahead and do that. Alright, so now that we're at our grinder, we're just going to turn it on and take each individual pin and roll it on the edge. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to knock that burr down, and it makes getting this into the hole a lot easier. Okay, so now we took off those burrs and it's a lot smoother. It's going to make putting those into the scales and the knife a lot easier. So there just won't be near as many hiccups. So now we're going to go ahead and start the glue up. Alright, so now we got our pins done. We're just going to mark on our scales. Make sure you have each side completely flat, because if it's not, you can have like glue lines inside on the edge, and you just don't want to see that. It just doesn't look attractive, and it's less functionality. So you want it to be as as flat as you can possibly get it. So what I like to do is I'll just mark an X right on here to show that that's the side, or the side that's going to be glued onto the knife. So that way when I'm actually in the process of gluing it up, I'm not rushing around thinking this and that, and everything's organized. So usually I'll put this one on the bottom. It's on the bottom, so you could just go ahead and write B for bottom and T for top. So that way you can just put it right on there, and then T for top right up here. So before we even glue though, we're just going to do a dry fit. And that's because I have a logo right here, and the top of my scale is flat. So I don't want it to be a flat, I want it to kind of curve around that logo, so it gives me a little extra room. And we'll get into that more, so I'm just going to go ahead and drill the holes, and we'll start with the drill press. Okay, so now that we're getting ready to drill our holes, I want this to be exactly aligned, to where I want it, so that back spine is just almost there, or almost on that edge, so I don't have to take anything off. So to get it to where it's going to be there, I'm just going to take some black tape and just tape it around the scale and the knife. Alright, so then when it's exactly where you want it, you got your black tape on there, then you can drill the hole, and then you won't lose it at all when it's turned on. So I'm just going to go ahead and drill the first hole. Okay, so now that we got that first hole drilled, we're just going to take a pin. Go ahead, stick it in here. Just tap that in with a hammer. And just make sure it's going to be aligned for the next one. So here we're just going to drill the next hole. And it's just the one diagonally from this. I mean, obviously it's going to be different for anything that you have, but I try to do things in a diagonal pattern just so it stays a lot more secure. Okay, the second one's drilled. We're going to put another pin in that. And we'll just go ahead and drill the last 2 remaining holes. Alright, now all the holes are done for that side. Now we're just going to take those pins out with a pair of vice grips, and you only want to grip one side, and it's just to give you ample room so you don't have an uneven pin when it's finally ground down. So we're just going to take those out real fast. Now go ahead and take the black tape off there and just repeat that process. Tape it up and then drill all your holes the same. Okay, now that we've drilled all the holes, we're going to put our scales together with the pins and then grind out the top and form the shape up there. So we're just going to go ahead and put these pins in. Okay, you can do all 4 pins, or you could do just the 2, as long as you have a good secure grip. Matter of fact, I might do it a little bit more. It's kind of like them to be even. But if you have a tight enough grip on there, you can just go ahead and do it like this. So what I'm going to do is shape the top of this right here. And I'm going to put kind of like an indent in there. And just kind of shape this too. So now that we're at the grinder, we're just going to take this top part of both the scales and smooth that down to an even surface, and then we're going to make our dip on the wheel up here, and it'll just make it a nice look to the top, and it'll go nicely around that logo. So we're just going to go ahead and turn the grinder on. Now we got a nice even top, we can do the dip. Now that you've got your top contoured, we're just gonna go ahead and take these pins out. And just make sure it's the side that you've already taken them out. You'll see the marks from the vice grips. Just wiggle those out. It's going to take a little bit of force, but they should come right out eventually. Okay. So now that those are out, we can go ahead and start the glue up. Okay, now before we even glue up, it's just important to have everything ready because I'm using a 5-minute epoxy. So, there's not a lot of room for error. There's a little room, but you just don't want to risk it. Otherwise, you're just going to have a mess to clean up, and nobody wants that. So, we're going to put 2 wood blocks in our vise so we don't damage the wood or the blade or anything. And it'll be a lot less, or the pins will dent into the wood and it'll push together real nicely. But we're going to put some cling wrap in between there, and that's going to prevent epoxy from getting all over your stuff. What I like to do is just take a sheet, maybe like 1.5 feet, and then just fold it in half and just kind of lay it in there. It doesn't have to be real neat or anything. You're just going to be putting glue in it anyway, so. But just to have this set up before I even glue it is going to be nice, because that shaves off 30 to 40 seconds or whatever. So, alright, we're just going to go ahead and put the glue on the scales and the knife, and we're going to come over here and clamp it together. First of all, we're just going to set our scales aside, and we're going to spray down each side of the blade with a little bit of Windex. And that's just to clean it up, get it prepped. And just wipe off the excess and give it a good rub. And make sure there's no grease or nothing to just kind of interfere with the epoxy. So now that that's clean, I like to just use anything with a pointy edge on there and just kind of scuff up where you're going to be gluing. This just kind of helps the epoxy contact to something. You can do that on both sides. And just kind of make crisscross pattern. So you just kind of rough up the whole surface. So you want to do that on the blade, and you want to do it on your handles. So be careful not to go dinging up around the edges. So try to keep it inside of it. We have that crosshatch pattern in there. We can go ahead and start mixing up our glue. What I'm going to do is this. I just use this for my glue board. I just use it over and over again because it's just nasty on everything else. So I'm just going to take an even amount of epoxy on each side. There's the red and the blue. This is DEFCON Home 5-minute epoxy. I just got it at Lowe's. I can't really remember the price. I think it was like $8 or $9, and there's quite a bit in there. You get these 2 big bottles full. So we're just going to lay out 2 even amounts of those. And just make sure they don't touch yet. Because if they do, it's going to set up a lot faster. Just get a good amount. As long as it looks pretty even, that's alright. It doesn't have, I mean, it's not too critical if you don't get exactly the amount right. So I'm just going to take what looks like 2 even pools. Cap those shut. I just like to put them back in the box. Get it out of my way. Before we even put this on here, I just want to let you know you're going to be putting it on the blade, I guess on the tang, and also on the handle, so that way there's no doubt that there's going to be epoxy on that section. So we're just going to go ahead and mix it up, and then we have 5 minutes after that to get all the pins in and into the vise and clamped together. So we're just going to go ahead and mix it up right now. Just want to get a pretty good even mix on. Just the biggest thing is making sure you have enough, so don't be afraid to skim, or don't skimp on it. Because if you just screw up one of them, then it's going to set you back a lot more time and cost you more money. So now that you get that evenly mixed, just go ahead and take your bottom, put your epoxy on there. Put that right there, and then put it on this side of the blade, or the tank. Just make sure every piece of surface is coated. Get it on there good. Okay, so now that that's there, we're just going to go ahead and set it down and put these pins in. One's in, the rest is kind of a breeze. Go ahead and put the other one in. I want to take some extra epoxy, put it in between there. Make sure not to get any on your logo. Get it on there real good. And you're going to put it on your top side. Just get every last bit of that surface all coated on there. And I'm going to flip it. Line those holes up with the pins. Put it right in your vise. Press it together. Just get it really tight. Sometimes I like to take a little pry bar, get it fairly decently tight, just so those pins set into that plywood. Alright, and now that it's in there, all we have to do is wait. So we'll come back out in an hour and we'll go from there. So I'll see you in a little bit. Alright, now we're back after the epoxy's been set, and we're just going to take it out of the vise and show you what it looks like. See that cling wrap gets all that extra glue. It doesn't get all over your vise and bench and everything else, so this is what we got. Yeah, so it's glued up and it's gonna be ready for shaping. So some stuff on here it might have got on your blade, but we're just gonna go ahead and take a razor and get that off. And as long as you go with the pattern that the steel is ground or hand polished, it won't scratch it at all, and you'll be able to take it off really easy. It'll just pop right off. So, alright, we're just gonna go ahead and do that. Alright, now that we got our razor blade, we're just gonna kinda take that along there. Just chip all that extra glue off. Anything, fingerprints or whatever. And it'll just come right off of there. You can also just use some sort of thinner. It'll come off, but I kinda like to get the bulk off with this. When you're doing this, make sure you wear your safety glasses, because sometimes you get a lot of the big chips and they'll flick off like right at your face sometimes, and it's just best to use some eye protection there. You can see this big piece that's on there, and it'll just pop right off. Just like that. You might need to use a a handle on there. If you use a utility knife, it gets you a little bit more leverage. See, those just chip right off. Okay, so now that we scraped the excess epoxy off of the blade, we're just going to take a rag and get some acetone and wipe down just all the extra, just little bits of this and that, and it just kind of breaks it down and makes it real nice. You can get it right up around there where the glue or the wood contacts the steel and kind of getting that crease. Just make sure you get all that extra stuff out first with the razor, and then it doesn't have to take so long. But this one's almost done, so we're just gonna take this now. We're gonna start removing some of the wood from the handle. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in my vise. So now that the knife's in the vise, we're just gonna take a angle grinder with a large stock removal wheel. This will just take everything off of there really fast, and I just use that for the inside of the knife. It just a lot of the wood that just doesn't need to be there, so I just need to get it off quick, and this is what I'm going to use. When you get to the steel, you just want to keep moving up. You don't want to take a lot of the steel off, otherwise you're just going to change the shape of your whole knife, and you just want to take off the stock. So once you hit steel, you'll see sparks fly, and after that you just move on to the next area. Okay, so that's what you're going to be looking at right there. You see most of that glue line's removed, and we got the basic internal part shaped, and now we're going to take off this back side, and we'll do that on the belt grinder. So we're just going to go ahead and move over to there. Alright, now we're at our grinder, so we're just going to take off this back side. There's a lot of epoxy just left on there, and we'll get this bottom grinded out, and then we'll start contouring the whole handle. So let's go ahead and start up the grinder, and we'll start on that. And you can see while I'm grinding, I kind of like to use my tool rest for just like a guide, and it'll just help you keep even. You keep both your sides even, and then you just want to expose the spine of the knife and get this just down to that bare metal, so it'll just be nice and flat that way. Alright, so now that we got that back spine all cleared, we're done with that part, and we can really now just start contouring the whole handle. So we're just going to get these sides flat and get that chipped out pieces just kind of out of there and make it look all nice on the sides. So I'm just going to go ahead and just remove some layer, just kind of thin this whole thing down, because that's just, I mean, as it sits, it's pretty thick right now for a knife handle, and you just want it to be a little bit thinner. Alright, now we're just going to try to take a look at what part we need to sand down and which part we need to leave alone. So this side right here is a little thick, and this side's really thin. So we're just going to keep taking stuff off this, or we're just going to keep taking stock off this side and try to even it out, and you just want to keep it generally even across the whole thing before we kind of start taking these edges off. So now we got our sides flat, we're just going to start contouring these edge sides, or these sharp edges right here. And what we're going to do is kind of put the knife on there flat and then roll it as that runs. And that'll give us a little head start before we start hand sanding. Now that we have our edge rolled across there, it's going to be a lot more comfortable in your hand, but we can take off a little bit of this edge too. by just going along here, just like that, and follow the whole contour all the way across the handle, and that'll just take off a lot of the bulk that we don't need. It would just take a lot of time to do hand sanding. So let's just go ahead and take that off. Okay, now the bulk is off there, so we can just go ahead and take it to the hand sanding. Alright, now we got our knife and the vise. Make sure it's in there good, because you're going to be going up and you're going to be sanding something up and down on it. I just get these small sanding belts. They're pretty cheap. I just kind of cut them up and just kind of split them open. Split them probably into thirds. So I'm just going to tear it right here and go all the way down. And now you have a nice little, just sand, like a little sanding strip. You can go back and forth. And we're just going to go like this. And get that all contoured nice and even. We got the spine done. Now we're going to go ahead and move it, turn it around. Make sure it's in there real tight. You don't want your knife to fall out and get dinged up. Usually for this part, I kind of like taking a smaller strip of sandpaper, because it's kind of, if you get in here, it kind of wants to make these little grooves along through there because it's so thick. So I just split one of these in half. That way you can get a lot more control. This is always kind of a part that I like to spend a little bit of extra time on too, just because it's, you know, it's going to be in somebody's hand for years, and you just want it to be absolutely right. Get it just perfect for them. For the most part, you got a decently contoured handle there. There's a little scratch marks just from doing that, and we'll clean that up again too. We'll go along the grinder and just kind of push it up against there again like we were earlier, and it'll make a nice flat surface again with no nicks or dings or anything. And then we'll hit this side up on our spindle sander, and it'll make it a nice flat surface, and it'll be a real crisp line from then when you get it all flat. So let's go ahead and move over to those machines, and we'll get you started on that. Okay, now that we're back at our grinder, I put on a finer belt. It's a 120 grit belt, and we're just gonna go over that edge again and just make sure it kind of smooths out and gets all those nicks and dings out. Now most of those heavy nicks are out, and we're gonna move to an even lighter grit belt now and clean that up a little bit further. This is a 200 grit belt. We're just going to do the same thing. Alright, now it's starting to look pretty good. Just want to note to be really careful, because after you grind that edge, it's really sharp up through here. I mean, it's just a square edge, but it's it'll cut you if you run your fingers across it. So just be careful of that, and well, now that we got the spine done, we can go ahead and move to the spindle sander. Alright, we're at our spindle sander now. I'm going to be taking it along here and just running it across the spindle sander, and just put some pressure on here and just run it all the way across there in a nice fluid motion, and you'll get a nice flat edge through there, and there won't be any little marks or anything like that. It'll just be a nice smooth surface all the way through. So we're just going to turn this on and go ahead and do that. Okay, that's looking pretty nice. But in doing that, it flattens the steel out, and then it kind of leaves some ridges along here with the, along the wood. We're going to take those down just by hand sanding. We're not going to be taking our sanding strips and moving up and down. It's just all going to be a folded piece of sandpaper now, and just everything is going to be hand sanded to your preference, I guess. So we're just going to go ahead and move to that station now. Alright guys, now it's just down to hand sanding from here. So just basically look for your major nicks. That's what you're going to need to sand out the most. And I just took part of that sanding strip and cut a piece off, and basically just going to be using my thumb for the work. So just kind of get in there and get your get those little dings out, and just kind of check it often, see what needs to be hit. If we want, we can go to a higher grit, and it'll just be just a nice higher level of polish. Okay, so here's an old worn out 200 grit, and some people don't know what to do with their belts after they use them on their belt grinders. They're just used up and they're not working so great anymore. I just like to keep them around for cutting up for hand sandpaper. Then I just don't have to go out and buy that stuff, and it just saves a lot on money there. So we're just going to go ahead and take a utility knife, cut off some sections. Just do one for now. And fold it over. I like these because they're just a real sturdy piece of sandpaper. It's meant for those belts, and they don't really break down or tear on you while you're working with them. So we're just going to go over the entire thing again, and it'll just have just a higher level of polish. Also, when I'm doing this, I kind of like to keep my thumb right here, so that way you don't accidentally go over and sand down onto your blade and just scratch it up. You could cover it up with tape if you want, but I have pretty good control of it right now, and I'm not too worried about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep sanding. Alright, that looks pretty good. To finish off, you might want to just hand polish the edge on here. There's a little bit of scratches now. You could also come over here to your spindle sander and finish it up that way. Just a real light pass through the whole thing, but other than that, it's pretty much done. The only thing now is left to just go ahead and put some sort of finish on here. If you have stabilized wood, it's already going to have your finish built in, and you can just buff it out with a clean buffing wheel. This, however, is not stabilized, so I'm going to go ahead and create another video sometime showing you how to go ahead and oil and wax your handles for it'll just help your wood stay protected from water, any sort of moisture, any weather, anything that's going to be getting on that handle. So that'll seal it all up and it'll be ready to go. But this has been another Whitebone Knives tutorial video. Thanks for watching, guys.